If you don't know who I am, I'm Suzanne Tidkemeyer. I wrote for almost 10 years for Pathos a column called No Longer Quivering, which dealt with quiverful, evangelical, fundamentalist kind um, of topics. Now I'm just doing the YouTubers for myself and sometimes still explaining some of the same old. One of the things that I've done is I started doing book reviews of these really awful fundamentalist and or quiverful books. I have gotten the biggest laugh and read more poorly written books in my entire life. I've never read so many. I really enjoy that, reading bad books. It's always been something I enjoy. In fact, I've done reviews on a number of bad books that are not fundy related, not religious related at all, including one that was about King Henry VIII's court, in which the characters spoke like Valley Girls, which I really had a problem with, and a couple of others. But this is one of those ones that Jill Rodrigues' sister, Lisa Moravek, wrote. Hey, Noelle. Lisa Moravek wrote this thing, and it is the most Mary Sue of all books I've read in a long time. This is why Mary Sue authors should never be published, even self-published, which I'm pretty sure she is. Now, we all know Jill Rodrigues, her of the big blonde hair, the oodles of makeup, the children that look like they walked out of Auschwitz. They're so thin. And the husband who, how shall I say this kindly? He is fluffy. Hey, Lisa. Good morning. Yep. Y'all all have a good morning. So any morning I can talk about these books. The Tubby Hubby. That's exactly right. And there goes Pork right over my head. Pork has been super cute lately. So super cute. She's done all kinds of stuff, including bringing me the treat bag to give her treats. So back to the Rodrigueses. Jill is kind of all over the place, pushing her plexus as the answer to everything. While her kids are super thin, a lot of people follow her. Her theology is all messed up. I laughed the other day. She had a picture of herself in front of a restroom door sign in a restaurant where it was a unisex restroom. I'm seeing that more and more places. I ate at a place yesterday that had a unisex restroom. It's not too uncommon anymore. But she made a huge thing about it, like it was the end of the world as we know it. Girlfriend, I got news for you. If you ever go to the Daily Grind here, or the Aquatech Disco, any of that's in that building, there is one restroom. It's on the second floor. There is a sign that I absolutely love, and I posted it in NLQ a few times. It's a sign that has a mermaid and a centaur. It has a mermaid and a centaur instead of a man and a woman, and it says, whatever, just remember to please wash your hands. So there's that. It's 2 stalls. It's open. It's just like 2 stalls off of a hallway with a wash basin there. I've peed there many times where there's somebody in the next stall that has an Audi instead of an any like me, and big deal. Nobody gets raped, molested, or anything else like Jill Rodrigues and many others have tried to say. It's not that unusual these days. Get over yourself, Jill. So anyway, so while Jill is fighting her culture war nonsense, they are disgusting and they smell bad. Noelle, I agree with you there, but at least if it's a unisex, I've never seen one that wasn't cared for as well as at least most ladies' restrooms are. So there's that. I guess they know that if they've got to share with a man, it better be clean. Kaiser has a lot of unisex family and singular restrooms in many of our clinics, but no multi-stalls. West Coast, yeah. West Coast is a little more advanced than East Coast on a few things. That, well, I should say Ohio, where she's at. So her sister and her were homeschooled by their mother. Somebody that I've seen people online refer to as Turtleneck Trish, because it's a really common thing in Funny Town to wear a shade shirt. I mean, even the shirt I've got on would be considered wrong, and they would have a shade shirt that would go up almost to the collarbones under this. So, for the sake of modesty, Turtleneck Trish is wearing turtlenecks and always does. I don't care how hot it is. You can see her in her turtleneck every time. And that's okay. That's her thing. But she homeschooled Lisa. She homeschooled Jill, and she homeschooled her other daughters, Amy. And I can't think if there's another one. But this book just proves what a horrible job she did homeschooling. There should be family room, absolutely. Oh, yes. Yes, yes, there should be. So the book follows a lady by the name of Serene. It's called Serenas Serenity. And the entire basis of the book is that Serene has suffered a tragic loss. Her husband worked 2 jobs so they could buy a house, an old house to fix up. And while they were fixing up the old house, they had like 5 or 6-year-old, 4-year-old twins and a 9-year-old daughter, and the house blew up because something was wrong with, was it the furnace or the stove? Something. Anyway, the house blew up, the child died, and that's the big secret. Yeah, I agree, Noelle. So that's her big secret. And so now they have lost their house, they've lost everything. They've placed their, this is the book, yes. So they've placed their 2 twins with her mother. The twins have the craziest names. And they're now living in a bad part of town while her husband works for a job and she looks for one. So she gets a job as a nanny with this family where the mother works full time. Evil, evil, evil. So she got this job where she works full time. Now I have to interject that Jill's sister Lisa has some parallels with this fictional Serena, which leads me to believe this is a Mary Sue. Mary Sue, Mary Sue. And listen to this from her bio. Lisa deeply respects her parents who sacrificed to home educate her and her sisters. Oh my goodness. So the character of Serena gets this job and she's driving around the neighborhood, the fancy neighborhood that she's about to work in. And she's upset because she thinks everybody's going to judge her with the fact that she's driving an old jalopy and has to live in the quote inner city. So she's freaking out about where she lives too, because she thinks the neighborhood is full of just demons and crazy. Let me read you a few little clips. People hung out lazily on their ramshackle porches, their cigarettes lighting the evening like diseased fireflies. Oh my, I'm not a fan of smoking, but I would not describe it that way. She had a neighbor that talked to her, warned her about how she was turning around without using her mirrors, and her only thing she could think was this. She was amazed that this man spoke perfect English. Okay, so we have poor shaming, we have racial shaming, we have all sorts of things going on in this crazy book. She thinks the hoodlums are coming after her, and she's just laying on the couch crying afterwards because there's so much poor shaming going on in the book. And she thinks everybody's judging her for driving a ramshackle car. Just so much. So anyway, the whole book is all about judgmentalism, and the main character, Serena, indulges in a crazy ass pity party. The entire book is a pity party, even though it's supposed to be about overcoming problems as an evangelical Christian with the Lord. But it reads like the most petty and whiny middle school girls who are upset the other girls have colorful, brand new Lisa Frank backpacks while she's stuck with an old flour sack to use. So she goes to her new job and starts judging the crap out of everything about it, about the fancy house, about the 4-year-olds that she is supposed to be the nanny of. I got to read you this. This is crazy too. This is one of those ones I'm just following along in my old book review, and I'm giving you the highlights of the crap that was said that we quote. They seem talking about 4-year-old twins here. They seem to appreciate the fattish woman in charge characters. The modern princess types were bold and scantily clad. These 4-year-old girls at her side were well on their way to becoming arrogant like their self-conceited examples. They hadn't been persuaded about the mystique of modesty and femininity. This heifer said this about 4-year-old girls. 4-year-old girls. Which just kind of blows my mind. Why would you say anything remotely nasty like that about 4-year-olds? They're kids. Okay, so the thing I have a problem with that is modesty culture is one of the sickest things in that particular world. There's a lot of rape embracing theology, and it turns 4-year-olds into sexual objects, not safe from the lust of men who cannot control themselves. This type of theology teaches that men have an animalistic nature and they're unable to control their sexuality in any way, shape, or form. So if you show an ankle and you get some SA happen to you, guess what? Yep, you deserved it, you filthy. What was the word that Jill likes to use in her post? Sluttish. You're sluttish, according to her, if you do that. So she spends so much of this book whining and having guilt and envy of everyone. And she gets chewed out again and again and again and again and again by the lady whose kids she's supposed to be taking care of for all kinds of really silly reasons. And here's the thing. She talks about complaining over and over and over and over to her husband about her job, saying this about her employer. Never before have I seen a mother cater her little ones so. Honestly, she treats the children more like equals than myself. Her twins are called Brookel and Joel. And there's some conversations going on where she calls them or they call her, and there is a whole lot of guilt because she has the kids living with the grandmother. So then she complains that she's being blamed for wanting nice things and the dirty carpet in her apartment. And okay, let me move on because this is all very repetitive, a whole lot of whining about everything under the sun. And the nice thing about it is one of the things about it, I should say, not a nice thing, but one of the things about this whole book is every time food is mentioned or she has to cook a meal for the children, for the 4-year-olds, well, I wouldn't doubt that they feel that women are all victims and they're predators. They're all the hunt. You can see where Jill gets all of her ideas about food because her sister has the exact same ones, or at least she says in the book. There's a mention of having boxed macaroni and cheese for dinner. There's a mention of making a casserole out of rice, condensed soup, and a chicken breast. There's mentions of serving a kids a bologna sandwich with mayonnaise and potato chips. Every food mention in this entire book, including when someone gifts them with a whole load of food, is pre-processed. It's all pre-processed junk. And that's one of the things that I cannot understand about, I'm just going to come around and say it, about the poorer people in Quiverful, in evangelicalism. A lot of them have these very unhealthy diets, even though there are better alternatives that are actually cheaper when you cook than these diets. But we've all talked about the super thinness of Jill's children, the way she portions out how she portions out the food for the kids. When we see them eating at restaurants, we can see what they do with the kids. That thing has its roots back in her childhood with her mother and the way her mother cooked. She definitely has food issues. Recipes from Campbell's Soup label. Yep. Jill's kids to be taking, they're being starved. I agree. There is no way on earth that as we can see, that those kids are getting anything remotely like a healthy diet. It's just not possible. And her son Timothy talked about that quite a bit when he was engaged to some girl when he was in Wisconsin. He told her all about the way the food was handled at his family. The way it's handled is not normal, but apparently, like I said, it happened way back. Nobody in that family really cooks. Nobody in that family apparently really knows how to cook. It's just all this pre-processed junk. So there's that. Let me go back. Okay, here's another crazy little bit. She hoped the girls noticed how she respected the belongings of their home. Again, it's all about what other people think about her. It doesn't have anything to do with the heart, what she thinks, what she believes. Starts talking about cooking that rice soup chicken mixture and having the twins join her in cleaning the kitchen, and they all set the table. And she acts like this is some kind of beyond a beyond normal thing, which it's not, obviously. That's something that most of us do in our day-to-day life, but she acts like it was something that nobody went through. And here's another bit of interesting whining she's doing about how much money she doesn't have. It baffled her as to how people could come up with means to pay for college, medical school, nice cars, and extravagant homes and still afford all the furniture accessories. She couldn't even have an inexpensive new couch or table from a department store. If she and Carl were choking under the bondage of debt while living very frugally, how more must the higher classes be silently strangling? Newsflash, not everybody in the world is struggling under debt. A lot of us tend to be frugal too, even when we have money coming in, and that's why we're not struggling under debt. She's assuming everybody is. Yep, they do move every time CPS gets involved. Every single time. Lisa, I'm afraid that's probably the homeschooling, but we're going to delve more in the homeschooling as we go on with this stupid book. As we go on with this dumb book. Suddenly we find out that Serena is some kind of expert organ player and about church. And somebody said this about homeschooling. It's thrilling to see results of homeschooling. When I read that, I was like, are we missing the word "the" in between "see" and results? The entire book is rife with incorrect word usages, misspellings, and other things indicating that the author's homeschooling educational was rather subpar. And in that part of the book, they're referring to a recent graduate of homeschooling's diploma that was bestowed upon him by his parents as a major head start instead of what it is, a rather meaningless piece of paper. Whoops, I got to go back. A rather meaningless piece of paper that really does not entitle him to anything except to say that he graduated from homeschool. Okay, where are we? Okay. There's chapter after chapter of this nonsense, and every single one of them, there's a whole lot of complaining by the main character, Serena, even though the book is all about trying to be serene in the most awful of times. There we go, the homeschooling, everybody in the church. There's some people in the church that are complaining they can't find somebody to marry, somebody else. Now she's complaining to somebody at church about her employer, Miss Emily Huff. Miss Emily was always a stranger somehow. One moment she would actually be friendly until some internal switch suddenly transformed her into the rude authoritarian. Obviously, she doesn't quite know how employer-employee relationships work in the home, because there are going to be those times when you get ups and downs, particularly when you have things happening where you have Serena violating the rules that her employer has put, and she does. She discovers that one of Mrs. Huff's neighbors, her employer, is a girl that she was homeschooled with that she knew really well called Bethany. Bethany came and hired her to play piano at the black tie dinner. And then while she was jealously saying all kinds of crap about how rich Bethany is and looking at her jewelry or her designer clothing and her big house, she goes, "Here." Bethany complained as they walked. "My husband is never any help with these occasions. He won't give me any suggestions or mingle well during my parties. I don't know why I married an older man. I should have known he'd be no fun. He always says he'd rather be spending time with me and adopt a child. I don't have time or energy to have a baby." She sighed disgustedly. Oh my, there's a lot there to unpack, a whole lot. Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Jill marry someone somewhat older than her? I think that's pretty common in a lot of the evangelical world. Older men, young girls. It just seems to be a thing. And it is even in this world. I have to admit, my own husband's 9 years older than I, but I've never had those kind of things. Oh, Jill is a huge victim, narcissist, and she hasn't hardly anyone else, and everything is all about her. It was for sale. It's still for sale on Amazon. Just look up Serenas Serenity. If you have a Kindle Unlimited account, like I do, it's a freebie. And you're just laughing because you're reading this, and she spends all her time either judging people, judging other people, worried about what other people think about her, or whining. It's one of the three. The whole book is just filled with whining and Mary Sue-ism. And Serena, every time she gets fussed at by her employer, goes home to weep and read her Bible. She wasn't even apologizing, even though she has claimed that she was apologizing. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm just scrolling through where I've written my chapter notes. And we're in the home stretch. There's only 2 more pieces left. Okay, why? Oh, that's really strange. Okay. I'm gonna have to dig a little further because my and I don't want to use vocal fry because I'm always criticizing others for doing that. I'm trying not to do it. It's hard on your voice. Is this it? No, it would be here. Okay, no, it would be here. I'm sorry. Okay, they decide to run away from Ohio. They decide to run away from Ohio and go back to New York, to northern New York, which happens to be the same places that Jill and her sisters have lived. So she seems to be just consumed with petty rivalries and all kinds of shallow and silly things. I'm reminded of the scene in Mad Men when Betty's psychiatrist tells Don that Betty is consumed with petty rivalries and feuds. Lisa, yeah, I can see that because in the 1950s, that was considered old maid. My mother married my father straight out of high school. Graduate one day, get married the next. It was that sort of thing going on. We know that that is not a good thing because your brain doesn't even finish developing until you're 25 or so. So getting married before that point is really risky. And I know I did it, and it was didn't work out well. And it was someone a lot older than me. So anyway, the rest of the book, when it goes, they run away to New York to see their daughters, move in with their daughters in some kind of old ratty apartment again, and they're complaining about the old ratty apartment again and about dirty upholstered furniture and things. And somehow she ends up in a piano competition in New York City, and she wins second place. But because of the fact that the top 3 winners of this fictional piano competition have to go around the country playing piano, and there is a codicil in the contract that says you cannot be pregnant, and she discovers she's pregnant, she has to give that up. It's almost like they have no awareness of labor laws that actually make that illegal. And in reality, she hasn't been practicing, but yet she wins a piano competition. The only practice she gets is a little bit of time on her employer's piano and on the piano there when she's playing at the competition. So it's the craziest wish fulfillment stuff going on. So after she turns down this thrilling career as a roving pianist, her and her husband get a job at a hotel, both of them, doing maintenance and cleaning and various things. And she's thrilled because she gets to bring her kids with her and homeschool her while she's scrubbing tubs. Yeah, she actually writes about that in quite detail. People are showering them with free groceries and things, and how good the Lord is, and how he's taking care of everything for them. And then they have to go back to Ohio for someone's wedding. Hijinks ensue. She plays the piano and the organ. She hides the fact that she's in labor all night through the rehearsal dinner and through the wedding, and then has the baby in the ambulance outside the church. Who does that? Nobody does that. No, well, I'm sure there's a way to do that. I just don't know what it would be. So after the baby's born and they go back to their life in New York, a bunch of stuff happens for them. A bunch of crazy stuff happens. The guy who was renting them an apartment in a house turns around and contacts them and tells them that he wants to sell them the entire building, no money down, at a reasonable price. His name is Dr. Noyes, the same spelling and everything as Lisa and Jill's original maiden name. He's a doctor with money and rental property and things. So she's giddily happy that this happened. Somebody from Ohio that worked also in the Huff House gives her all her furniture, their furniture. Another former friend in Ohio comes to live with them to take care of their girls and live in the apartment upstairs while they're downstairs in the main bulk of the house. So they're like, God is so good and he's met every single need. Yeah, how do you hide labor? That's what I want to know. Well, I want to know that. She hid her labor from the rehearsal dinner, right? Likely around like 6 maybe, and you have your rehearsal before that. So maybe about 4 or 5 until 2 or 3 the next day when the wedding took place. That is one long, I am hiding my labor. Lisa, I wonder how much of this actually is bio, because At the very beginning, in the introduction, she says that her and Serena share all these different things in common. And she wanted to encourage people to stick with the Lord. And by the very end of it, even the people in Ohio that she'd been around came to the Lord. Even Mrs. Huff comes around. And the next thing you know, they all know the Lord. Let me get to the very last one, so I can read you some of the quotes about everybody coming to the Lord at the end, because I was just reading this with a jaw drop. Here's a justification for homeschooling. I told him the analogy of a greenhouse. Young plants are like our impressionable children. They need to be sheltered within the home where they learn independent thinking rather than undesirable, oftentimes, destruction, peer dependency. Holy awkward sentence back, man. Ultimately, they accept our biblical values over indoctrination in secular humanism. Oh my, obviously someone has never looked at Homeschoolers Anonymous or the other related sites showing how many of those kids are walkaways from their families and from their religions. A lot of them are, and a lot of them are very angry later when they discover exactly how they were shorted on education and how many hurdles they have to make up. This is this is one of the funny things about this. You can see how well that home education has worked out for Jill's oldest son. Flunked out of Moody, flunked out of his school in Wisconsin. At least this is alleged. I haven't seen the report cards to say for sure that I know for 100% fact he has flunked out, but it's alleged he's flunked out. And the last place he was, it was actually a community college. So if it's anything like the community colleges that I know in Virginia, the standards aren't really super high. And I've known a ton of homeschoolers to go there and pick up the skills necessary to be able to transfer into UVA or anywhere else and compete. They pick up whatever they're short on. And there are a lot of remedial classes as well. Noelle, what is going on with the U.S. schools that everybody's going to have to homeschool? I mean, I see the fighting. Okay, I get US TV. I get new US TV from Miami. I get the Miami channels. And I watch those avidly. And I don't quite. Florida's having their own issues with schooling right now because of the mask mandate. The governor, who's something of a Trump supporter type, and he doesn't believe that the science behind COVID is real. He has ordered schools to not mandate masks, saying that, sorry, I ate blueberries earlier. That's driving me crazy, that blueberry seed. Anyway, so long story short, he said that if a school chooses to mandate masks, then the Florida Board of Education won't pay that school. They won't receive any money. None of the teachers or the administrators will get paid. And a lot of schools, despite him, are putting in mask mandates, which is a responsible thing to do with the rates they've had in Florida. The rates are so high there that putting masks on the children until everybody is vaccinated is caution. It's not unreasonable, in my opinion. So there's that going on, and you have your evangelical types that are going to all the school board meetings and threatening people and saying all kinds of horrible things because of the mask mandate. They're threatening people's lives. CRT and now parents who disagree with what's being taught are referred to the FBI. Ooh, that's pretty crazy. I think at that point, I don't know if I would homeschool. I mean, maybe, but there are going to be a lot of private schools out there that don't teach that. There are homeschooling cooperatives. If you're going to homeschool, please join a cooperative so that you can exchange things that you are expert in or you're not expert in. Don't try to do it on your own. Get a real correct curriculum. Make sure you understand what it is you're teaching. For me, I would have done okay with everything until we got to math. Then I would have to refer to my husband and have him teach the math because my math skills are actually very poor. I can balance my checkbook. I can do enough math to be able to translate patterns, make them bigger or smaller, doing stained glass and all that. But higher math, like algebra, I don't remember any of that crap from school. Who needs socialization? Proper nutrition, that crazy science, idea, discourse. Yeah, that's the problem. That's the only problem I have with homeschool is it allows abusers to hide the abuse, particularly if you're not feeding your children or something like that, or you're beating them. And you miss some of the socialization aspects. Let's face it, a big part of schooling is learning how to navigate all the different personalities you're around. And that, I mean, for good and bad. Now, there are times when, as a parent, you do have to step in and take action at the school. I've had to do it myself a number of times. But you pretty much let the school do the education unless they're trying to push something too crazy. Then at that point, you start thinking about pulling your kids out and doing something else. Okay, and here's some more that she says about homeschooling. Serena had a faraway look as she answered, "Homeschooling is a way of life that's indomitable and filled with the pioneer spirit." And when she was at that wedding, the wedding where she was in labor, she could not put her own petty jealousy aside because she found out that the lady and her husband were getting a modular home and a piece of land as a wedding present. Quote, she tried to rejoice for Suzanne, the name of the character, the other character, but she had a difficult time casting down her covetous thoughts. I find that so weird because I can honestly say, oh my goodness, yeah, that would be a problem. No, if they're not allowed to fight. I can honestly say that I have never envied somebody else in my family and my friends that had a nicer house, a bigger house, different circumstances. I have a brother-in-law who's many times over a millionaire. He has had all kinds of big and fancy houses. The only thing I've ever felt was happy for him because he really, he's been blessed. He's been blessed. He's got all that. And it brings him some joy. So that's really the way it is. I wanted to build a tiny home we got here. We somehow ended up with a rather large house on a large piece of land with a guest house. I don't even know how that happened because my thing was I wanted a tiny, tiny, tiny house. And that didn't happen. But I'm perfectly content to be where I am. If you don't have to learn to get along with others, there's no respect of others. Tribe mentality. Yeah, I think you're right about that. There's no respect in this book at all for anybody else except for her own desires and how she thinks everybody should be living, but or not living. So where are we? So at the very end, her former employer, Emily Huff, shows up at the hospital with her twin 4-year-olds and the husband, and the deaf and blind gardener, Dan, from the very beginning of the book. Emily blurts out she's convicted by Serena's relationship with Claire and Blair and just knew she had to quit her job and raise her own children. Then they start gossiping about Serena's old friend, Bethany, and all the things that has happened to her and leaving her husband, all this just bad stuff. So they get this new house, falls in their lap virtually for free. Her old friend comes and stays with her. She gets the guy's furniture. And she talks about how blessed she is. And all these people surrounding her that are, quote, blessing her, praise Serena. They praise her hard. And then she goes on to say she's learned serenity from all the horrible things she had to endure to get to that point. All of her hardships have made her serene, truly. It made Serena serene. I don't know. The only serenity I see going on here is she seems to be like Serena Joy in The Handmaid's Tale, except a lot poorer and a whole lot more envious and whiny. The whole book is just a Mary Sue fiction whine-a-thon about being poor and how you'll be blessed eventually. That's not how God works. Yeah, it's very cheesy, Noelle. I busted out laughing reading the book so many times because the middle school behavior of the main character was just, you could tell she's like stuck in that 12-year-old mindset. And while there are blessings to be had, and you do have to actively take hold of your life and do responsible things like get education, get good jobs, that sort of thing, there's a certain amount of stick-to-itiveness you have to have, even if you're poor. There's no reason why you can't start working at McDonald's and end up as a shift supervisor and then end up owning the place eventually. You just have to decide that you are going to make the best of what you have and be content. That's one thing I've had to learn the hard way. Can say I'm honestly content anywhere we've ever lived, except for one place where I was not very grateful and I whined a lot. That was the 4 months that we stayed in the room that was made out of plastic panels under the carport of our Costa Rican host family when my husband was teaching in Cope de Dota. I wasn't real grateful then. I was actually kind of shell shocked, and I cried for 4 months, but I got over that. I did get over it. I figured out ways to deal and cope, and that's life. Being content is a learning process, most definitely, Noelle. It is. And to learn to take that and be content, it is a blessing. It's a blessing, whether you believe in God or not, but it cuts off all the stupid envy that she's doing throughout the book, where she's looking at everything anybody else has, and she is saying, I should have that. If it wasn't for this, I would have that. And there's a lot of blaming and shaming there too. Her doing it and others doing it to her. Like there was a sequence I didn't mention early in the book where somebody from her old church went off on her for wanting it all and all now, saying that she pushed her husband Carl to work 2 jobs, and the house exploded and killed her daughter because she was so insistent on having the right kind of house in the right neighborhood, which I think has very little to do with any of this. And she also had a fair amount of guilt about things that were just completely 100% beyond her control. And I didn't mention one thing. Towards the beginning, there's a mention of going to a grocery store where you have to have a quarter for the basket. That was clearly Aldi's. I don't know how many of you guys shop at Aldi's. I used to shop at Aldi's when I lived in the States because there was one near my house, and I loved it. And that was one of the few things my husband and I have argued about, is I would keep my Aldi's quarter in the cup holder of my car. And it seemed like when he drove my car, he'd say, a quarter. And he'd pick it up and I'd be at Aldi going, damn, where's my Aldi's quarter? Well, she talks about this in the book too, about going to Aldi's, except she doesn't call it Aldi's. And it's all whining, not having money for bags, not having the coin for the quarter, having to carry everything in her arms. Oh my gracious. It's just so hard. Life is so hard. And that's the other thing about the book. All this normal, natural stuff we all go through, she's whining about it. Receiving instruction from her boss, receiving correction from her boss, which is normal. If you work any type of job whatsoever, you're going to have feedback and you have to adjust yourself either way. I mean, that's part of what being paid to work for somebody else involves. It involves you adhering to their rules, whether you like it or not, which is the other thing that you look at with evangelical fundamentalists. A lot of them only believe in working for themselves. They don't believe in any type of job with anyone else, being under anyone else's authority. And now you see why, because they seem to be thin-skinned people who can't take any kind of pushback at all. Okay, and now I got to talk about something completely unrelated to something completely unrelated, and unrelated either to Pestilence Adams. So I'm not talking about her again either. Last night, I got to tell you guys, I had one of the worst experiences I've ever had. Our mutual friend who lives right down the road from us that we've been helping out a lot, she really, really, really did something pretty awful last night. In the afternoon, we were at the beach. She sent us a message and said, hey, do you mind getting groceries for me? Well, I don't mind doing that. I've done it before. This time, the grocery list was 4 full pages. And it took forever to get it done. And I got to tell you something. I threw my back out doing it. That's how much stuff and how heavy the cart was and stuff. So I think we're going to have to keep working on that no. And I'm getting ready to formulate a response where I'm going to say, I can't do a big grocery run for you like that. I can pick up a few items for you up to like 20, but beyond that, I can't do. I just can't do it. My back just responds poorly when I got to push an overloaded trolley. And the other thing is I'm thinking about doing a YouTube drama response. Why? No, not Pestilence Adams and no one around her. There's a YouTuber that I actually like. I mentioned him here before, who does the he goes to the graves, to the cemeteries, and he looks at the graves and he teaches history from that, which is mostly good. I'm going to say that's mostly good. But here's where I'm having issues with him. And this is something I've sat on for a long time, and I've thought about it. And I saw another tour guide from there talking about this somewhat similarly. In New Orleans, there are many Catholic graveyards. There are a pile. Yep, she is a vampire. She's an emotional vampire, I think right now. And a vampire of various other things, my friend. So now I see what she's like. So this guy, he does this. He goes around all these graveyards. New Orleans has lots and lots of Catholic graveyards, and many of the Catholic graveyards are private. He went to New Orleans and did St. Louis 1, and he may have done St. Louis 2 for all I understand. That's kind of a sore spot with me because I have relatives in St. Louis 1 and St. Louis 2. They're 2 very old cemeteries. And they're closed. They're closed to the public. Not only are they closed to the public, all filming is forbidden. But that didn't stop him. He complained about it, and then he ran his, what do you call it? He went over the walls and filmed. He used his, why am I having trouble calling up this word? Senior assistant ice, or his drone. He flew a drone over and filmed. And missed so many things. Missed the fact that graveyard has been decimated. That people have been cutting off all the statuary for years, and it is shambles. Now, the diocese has cleaned it up some, but it's not what I would call perfect. And he concentrated on Nicolas Cage's pyramid that's in St. Louis 1, and on Marie Laveau. And he had incorrect history of Marie Laveau. He had incorrect history of the oven-shaped wall vaults. Incorrect history about all that. He didn't even know that the phrase, I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole, actually originated there in that graveyard. It has to do with the oven vaults. He missed all of that. The only thing he could think of was taking his drone over the wall and photographing Nicolas Cage's pyramid. Total and complete disrespect of the Catholic Church and the diocese. Filming prohibitions that have been in place forever. They've never allowed anybody to film in there. When Easy Rider went there and filmed, they did not get permission. They filmed against all permission. And as a result, the statuary and the mausoleum that they filmed at is all broken up now because people have come and tried to recreate the let's smoke dope and screw scene on the, yeah, so disrespectful. And it really bothers me. It bothers me a lot. So I think you may see this later today. I think I'm gonna do a video on this because he really strayed far. And he also missed he got some good stuff with the Metairie Cemetery, which I'm less familiar with because I don't have any relatives there. I have no reason to go. But he missed some important things there too. He missed in all the New Orleans cemeteries that the reason there are huge spikes where there are years where tons of people are buried is all the yellow fever epidemics that they've had in New Orleans that have just, bumped off huge amounts of the population. He missed that while commenting on the World War I and the Spanish flu epidemic victims. He missed the fact that there are several people from the Al Denier hurricane in the mid-1800s buried there. He missed a lot of really good educational opportunities. And I don't know if I'm going to watch it anymore because knowing how badly he screwed up the history, the part of the world I'm from, makes everything else he says extremely suspect. And I don't want to feel that way. I would like to feel like he really is doing his research and he knows what he's talking about. But all I can say is in New Orleans, he did a huge fail. Huge fail. Now, I haven't looked at his other Louisiana cemetery videos yet. And he missed my favorite cemetery, which is the Little Misery Cemetery in Baton Rouge that was a completely abandoned wreck until like the late 1980s. When someone finally said, oh, holy crap, there's a cemetery here. I used to drive past it every day on my bicycle, take my bicycle to work and to college. And I knew there were gravestones there. You could see them from the road, but everything was so overgrown. There was so much brush. I always wondered, well, now I've heard the history of that cemetery. It's all freed blacks who worked on the plantation that was on that property. And there was a plantation for a long time before they tore it all up and put in a TJ Maxx and an Albertsons. So I think I'm going to be crawling over his Louisiana videos and I'm going to do some YouTube drama. Now, I know I said I wouldn't do YouTube drama, but sometimes there's things you just absolutely must call out. I called out Pestilence Adams over and over again. I'm done calling her out. And the world is calling her out now. I saw a CNN report the other day on the Brian Laundrie search, and they called her out. They didn't mention her by name. They just said gossiping YouTubers. But I think we all know who all they were calling out. They were calling out a number of people. So even though I said I would not do YouTube drama, I think this guy, he needs to know. He needs to know that this is so disrespectful to the people who are buried there, to the families, to anybody involved. He's got to be more accurate with his information than what he's doing. Like I said, he missed the whole thing about the 10-foot pole. I wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole, comes straight from New Orleans, because the oven crypts, okay. He said that the people put in the oven crypts, that the caskets and the bodies cooked and broke down just like they had been cremated. That's not true, because cremation starts at 1600 degrees or greater. And while the sunshine and the heat in New Orleans does break down those bodies and caskets, it doesn't happen as quickly as he's saying. But it happens quickly enough, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, that what they do is they have this 10-foot long pole. That's where the I wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot long pole came from. And it has a like a hoe-like thing on the end. They shove it in there, and they manage to shove the remains, what's left of the casket, what's left of the person, down to the very back where it goes down a hole, where it goes down in a pit, because it's already broken down so far. And then they put somebody else in there, a family member usually, and they engrave their name on the stone that goes back to close up the oven The oven, because it looks like a brick pizza oven. So now you know where they came up with, I wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole. They're referring to that 10-foot pole that you clean out the oven casket holder, and that's your 10-foot pole. Okay, I gotta go. I'm talking shit too long. Talking about my friend and talking about this stupid guy. And the book. If you want to laugh, it is on Amazon. It's on Kindle. If you buy it, it's like $1.99, $2. If you have Kindle Unlimited, you can download it and read it for free. It's a quick little thing. It's all whining, all craziness. Next week, we start on the craziest of the crazy books. Debbie Pearl's book on neuroplasticity. That one's probably going to take me 2 or 3 weeks to completely break it down, because that book is a complex one, and I have a number of issues with it. And it also features Jill Rodrigues. Jill seems to be the, what is that? She's like the thing that links everything together. She's the nexus of the web with all the fundy books lately, it seems. There's a chapter that Debbie Pearl has written in the book about Jill Rodrigues' youngest daughter, Janessa, because Janessa was born without the connection between the two halves of her brain, and rather than get her a real treatment, Jill practiced neuroplasticity. And I'm very interested in that, because even with my stroke, I've talked to my doctor about this. Neuroplasticity is the thing that is allowing me to start regaining some function and ability to walk. And Janine, I'm not entirely done. I'm still got to talk about this, but because neuroplasticity, there's a certain part of it that works, and I think that they're studying this. This is a brand new field, so it is exciting. It's not exciting that Debbie Pearl has taken every single study, and legitimate studies, and misinterprets all the evidence. Like I said, neuroplasticity is the thing that's allowed me to start having some sensation and more balance, more and more every time I go around. I'm trying to do more exercise, and the things that said, I know that 6 months is past, and I probably won't regain everything, but I will regain some function. So Jill talks about how her daughter rewired her brain because of neuroplasticity, and she didn't have to send her to any physical therapy or anything like that, which makes me cry for the little girl, because even in West Virginia, where Jill did live at the time, there are free resources she could have accessed through the evil public schools and the evil CPS and the evil social services that would have provided help for that child. The kind of help like coming in-house to work with her on physical abilities. People with the condition that Janessa has tend to have problems walking, and they may be impeded in other ways, but because our brains are such marvelous things, there may be ways around most of that. But Jill chose not to take advantage of the free things that she could have taken advantage of that would have helped the child, and just use Debbie Pearl's crazy ideas about neuroplasticity. Like I said, I'm very excited about the field, because there are things to be learned from the animal world. I mean, cats, just an example, cats can have strokes in their old age, but instead of ending up discombobulated for years or months or whatever, they end up, their brains rewire within about 10 minutes, and they're able to get up and walk around. I'm envious of that, and I'm hoping that science will keep up with that. Yeah, Janine, I'm going to have to, because it is a crazy book. I am doing better. Better. So thank you, Lisa. I am doing better, but I'm realizing more and more that I have to say no to a lot of things because I just can't. I just can't. My husband wants to do it. I guess he can keep competing for the trophy for the nicest guy in the world, I guess. I'm done with that. Okay, you guys, I'm going to go ahead and go. I've been more than an hour. I will see you guys later. Maybe tomorrow. I may be ranting tomorrow and correcting all of his wrong information. But I got a lot of videos to watch first. Take care.